Hi everybody, Brian here. I'm here with Natalie News. She's with Canine Companions, the leading provider of service dogs in the United States. So Natalie, what can you tell us about Canine Companions?
The mission of Canine Companions is to create opportunities to gain greater independence for people with disabilities by providing highly trained service dogs free of charge.
And if someone's interested in getting a service dog or wanted to donate their time or money, how would they get in touch with Canine Companions?
They'd visit our website at canine.org, where you can find opportunities to donate, to inquire about an application for a service dog, or to learn about volunteer opportunities as well.
A worthy cause and a lovely organization. Thank you, Natalie.
Compelling stories are not hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Join your host, Dr. Eric Shaw, prosecutor Ryan Frank, writer Adrian Bonenberger, and comedian Ryan Connor as they interview ordinary people about their extraordinary experiences. This is Baggage.
Hi, and welcome to Baggage. Tonight, we have the pleasure of doing our second charitable episode with Dear Jack. With us again is Susan Wendishen. Susan, welcome back to the show. Remind us a little bit about Dear Jack.
Thank you so much for having me. So the Dear Jack Foundation, we are a nonprofit that supports young adult cancer patients and survivors. While we were founded and based in Colorado, we work with participants all over the country. We have 3 different programs that run from diagnosis all the way through to survivorship.
Awesome. Love it. We love working with you guys. We love having your guest on here. And our guest tonight is Erika Mervick. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Erika, obviously with Dear Jack, we know that you are a cancer survivor. So that's kind of a given going into this. But why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll start into your story.
Sure. So, like you said, my name's Erika. I'm 33. I was diagnosed with cancer at 28 years old, and I work in marketing for the Dear Jack Foundation. So when I saw that job open up, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my 2 worlds colliding. I studied marketing in school, and I'm an AYA cancer survivor. So I'm so excited to be here and to be part of this amazing organization. But my story is very long-winded. I feel like it has lasted for the majority of my life. I was diagnosed in 2021, but I was sick for many, many years before that. And the doctors think that that was the cancer this whole time. And it finally came to a head in 2019 when I was in a gentle yoga class, keyword gentle, and I broke a rib. I just felt a pop. I've always been hypermobile. So the doctors were like, well, you know what? You're just hypermobile. That's what it is. And maybe rest and put some ice on it and you'll be good. And so then it sort of spiraled from there.
That's interesting, but in a sad way. This was something that we talked about with the last Dear Jack episode of just how young people's symptoms are often written off as just, oh, this, cancer doesn't happen to young people. This can't be that. And the diagnosis that probably should have happened is delayed. And how so many people with young people end up being diagnosed much later in their cancer because of that. Was that kind of the experience that you had?
Yes, absolutely. So I should probably mention that I have multiple myeloma. It's a blood cancer, first of all, of the plasma cells within the bone marrow, but it's something that a lot of older people have. So it was not even on the doctor's radar to test me for multiple myeloma. It begins with a blood test and then is confirmed with a bone marrow biopsy, but it took so long for me to get tested, just a simple blood test. And let's see, I was slowly but surely falling apart, probably physically and mentally. And like I said, I broke that rib. It healed.
Let's back up. What were the stuff you said you had symptoms well beforehand? Can you kind of talk us about how did that build and how did you end up with that, getting to that moment?
Sure. So I had all sorts of things. I had IBS. I was diagnosed with migraines and POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And that took a long time to be diagnosed with in and of itself, several years. And I was diagnosed with that in high school. We used to play sports and be pretty active. And then all of a sudden that was just taken away from me. And I was essentially passing out when I would stand up. It's hard to shower, hard to do anything. And like I said, took a while to be diagnosed with that. They always knew that it was caused by something, but they didn't know what. And they thought, well, maybe it was an infection that caused this. We're just not really sure. POTS will go away in a lot of patients, sometimes just a few years. It often happens in young women, which is something that, young women are faced with a lot, is that, oh, you're a young woman and it's because you're menstruating, or it's because you have anxiety, or whatever it might be. There are certain diagnoses that are just slapped on young women, I feel like. And so I dealt with that for quite a long time. And the first drug that was ever prescribed to me was an anti-anxiety drug. They were like, oh, well, your heart rate is going fast, so you must be anxious. Here you go. And they thought that would fix it. It obviously didn't. I was finally diagnosed with POTS through a tilt table test and a stress test and some other tests. Yeah, that changed my life entirely, and it never went away. They, like I said, knew that it was caused by something, but didn't really think much of it. They were just kind of like, well, I guess we'll see. I was always fatigued. That's one of the symptoms of POTS. I was always really fatigued and really tired, and I would wake up in the morning thinking about going to sleep at night, and that was what filled my days. I couldn't play sports anymore, couldn't really hike, couldn't be as active as I would like to have been or was used to being.
This is before 2019, or is this like around then as things are?
No, so this is like high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that kind of lasted through college. And after college, I felt a little bit better, but then I felt even worse. So coming up to 2019, I'm super fatigued, working my day job, and I'm just struggling to get by. I break this first rib, and they're like, well, it's just your hypermobility, so you'll get better. And it was absolutely excruciating. The pain of a broken rib, I'm not sure if either of you have dealt with it before, but it was absolutely excruciating, and there's nothing they can do about it. They can't, do a surgery or do much of anything at all. So you're just supposed to rest, and hopefully it'll get better. And it took quite a while to heal. Then when that healed, I broke another one. That one I actually leaned over a chair. The chair kind of went in between my ribs, snapped that one.
So this cancer, it can make your bones more brittle. Does it also make them heal a lot slower?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
What she's describing is called a pathologic fracture, where you're not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing, and it breaks, and that's a huge red flag. So,
gotcha. And is it hard to get your doctors to do the necessary tests, because it's hard to get insurance to cover these tests or something for like something that could be a condition that's not expected for your age? Is that usually what it is, or is it doctors who are like, oh, just kind of looking for the simplest answer? Do you know?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who deal with insurance barriers. I'm not sure if that was the case for me. I didn't want to pay for it. I think that was part of it. My insurance would cover it, but my out-of-pocket cost would still be pretty high. So I remember that getting in the way of me going in and doing a scan of my ribs, for example. The doctors didn't recommend that, and nobody was asking me or pushing me that direction. But my parents are both in medicine. My dad's a doctor and my mom's a nurse. So my mom was always like, well, maybe you should get some sort of scan. And I was just like, I don't want to pay for that. It's so expensive, especially if you're kind of pushing the doctor. I know it's important for us to advocate for ourselves, but there are some times where you just don't know what you don't know. And so if the doctors, the people who have gone to school for a long time, and the professionals are telling me that it's just my hypermobility, I think I wanted to believe them. I didn't want to be sick. I didn't want it to be something worse. I didn't want it to be broken. So I think they told me what it was, and I said, yeah, okay, sounds good. Yeah, they didn't do anything for me for a long time.
Years. And it sounds like about a decade then, right?
Right. And I was not somebody who didn't go to the doctor. I was constantly at the doctor with parents who were in medicine. I'm very close to the clinic. I was always there. They were always prescribing me something, whether that be different beta blockers for my POTS or anxiety meds because they think that that's what it is, or something for my IBS. I mean, it was just a Band-Aid constantly being put on top of the symptoms that I was having. things for my migraines, things for whatever it might be. They were just like, oh, you have this, here you go. So 2019, I break the rib, plural, several, break another one, just stretching in the house. They're, of course, telling me that I'm not active enough because now it's 2020 and it's the pandemic. And they say, I just don't have an ergonomic work from home setup. I wasn't used to working from home. So that tracked, that made sense. I didn't.
Everyone who worked from home broke their ribs. It's true.
Just everybody. They're just breaking left and right. So yeah, they were just like, figure it out, get a better chair, get a better pillow, you got to go on walks because you're not doing anything anymore. You got to eat better. You got to do all of this. And I had faced that before several times over my life, really, is my doctors telling me, well, you're just out of shape. You have POTS, your heart rate's going really high. You're just out of shape. You just need to be
despite all the stuff you were doing,
yeah,
as far as sports and things. And that was their solution. Huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then what do? I'm like, all right, I need to exercise more, which is the worst thing that I could have been doing in that exact moment, was more physical activity when I was breaking bones doing the simplest things. And I mean, myeloma patients can break bones picking up a cup. You could pick up the smallest thing, move in the smallest way, and fracture a bone. You could breathe, cough,
oh my God,
do anything, and bones could shatter. So I didn't know that at the time, though, and so my sweet father came over and we would go on walks together. And it started, we're going 2 miles, then we're going a mile, then we're going around the block, then I'm going to the end of the street, then I'm going to the end of the driveway. And soon enough, I couldn't do any of it at all.
Man.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine bones. I knew a comic who's he didn't have cancer, but he had some disease where his bones would just break if he bumped into anything. Do you know what that's called, Eric?
Osteogenesis imperfecta.
Okay. I always called it reverse Wolverine syndrome.
It's like what Mr. Glass, like from those Shyamalan movies. Like
that's it. I mean, it's awful for him because it's his whole life, but I can't imagine where suddenly you just develop that and that's just your life. And is myeloma, is that a cancer that's typically hereditary, or is it just random, or is it like our co-host Ryan, who's not here? He says it's caused by sin.
That's great.
Feel free to slander him all you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hereditary. No, they've never found that it runs in families. There are some cases where a mother and a son will have it or something similar, but no, they don't believe that it runs in families. So
this is usually an old person problem too, like 50 plus. Like, so for someone your age to get it is super weird.
Yeah.
Were you knitting a lot? Were you like,
yes, I'm an old soul.
Why did your body think you were in your 80s?
Right. Exactly. I know I went from 20s to 85 in the span of, a few weeks. And then I remember after, I'm going through all this, I have all this pain in my ribs and it is not being made better by anything at all. And I had some friends come into town and we all went out to dinner and we were all really excited. I hugged them. One gave me a big old bear hug and I just felt the most intense crack that just reverberated throughout my body. And I lost my breath and I kind of just stood there. And of course, I didn't say anything because that's my MO. I'm like, I'm fine. Everything is fine. Don't worry about me. And I didn't say anything. And we sat down to dinner and I was like, something has happened. I don't know what it is, but if I were to imagine what breaking a bone felt like, this is it. Because with the ribs, I felt the cracks happen, but it was about 24 hours before I felt any pain. I'm not sure if that's normal with rib fractures, but at least that's how it was for me consistently among all of them. And so I felt pain immediately with what was my sternum breaking in that moment. And I went to the doctors and I was like, you guys, something is happening. I feel like I broke my sternum. And I said that to them, what I said to you guys. I was like, if I were to imagine what breaking a bone felt like, it was a crack. Yeah. I felt it. It shook me to my core.
Where are we at timeline wise here?
This is probably end of 2020.
Okay.
I'm at the doctor and I'm like, help. And I had doctors sit me down and show me the anatomy of the human body and say, this is where your sternum is. This is, what it's protected by. This is why you can't break it. It doesn't just break. It doesn't, you have to be in some sort of car accident, high impact crash, high impact accident of some kind to break your sternum. It's a really strong bone. They go on and on. I see a rheumatologist. He's feeling my sternum. He's laughing.
This wasn't even in the ER. This was you went through your primary care stuff.
ER yet at all.
Jesus. Okay.
No.
How are you up and moving?
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I don't know.
Oh my God.
I don't know. But that's why I was ultimately diagnosed, because I slowly lost function in my body and my sternum broke in two places. I think once, I know once was when I hugged that friend. I think the second time was a cough, because I remember just this overwhelming feeling of pain and then just crying. Like I had no control over my tears. That was a new thing for me too. Like the pain was so bad that I would just cry and I had no control over it.
Are your muscles and organs also that delicate when you're going through this? Or is it mainly bones?
It's mostly your bones. Stop me. I don't want to.
Oh, because it's a
correct,
marrow
yeah.
disease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gotcha.
You get these like little lytic lesions kind of in the bone and just makes them more and more fragile. So think of like little moth-eaten little holes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm working at the time. I have a full-time job, and I remember just having to cancel meetings, postpone meetings because I couldn't sit up straight. And that was a really tricky thing, because you go from being able to perform at your job to not being able to perform. I had really intense brain fog. The pain all over my body was just immense. Nobody really believes you when you say, well, I have to postpone this meeting. I can't sit up. They want a reason as to why you can't do the thing. So I was, really just making stuff up at this point. I was like, maybe I pulled a muscle, or maybe something happened, and I'm Googling things, trying to figure out what it could be and why there's cracking happening all over my body. And
particularly at your age. For Ryan and I, we say, oh, I threw my back out, people will believe us. But if you're a young 20-something, no one's going to, it's not going to fly.
No, nobody believed me. My parents believed me, but the doctors didn't really. My job didn't at all. They were like, do you just not want to work here? And I said, that's not it at all. I'm in the worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life. And I don't know why. I have no clue. I thought maybe it was Ehlers-Danlos. I've always had symptoms of that. They've never diagnosed me, but is it connective tissue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's a connective tissue disorder. And with all the symptoms you described up until the bone breaks, a lot of it could be very consistent with that. So between like hypermobility, that's one of the key hallmarks of it. And then the POTS with it too, you can see that actually, I'm not giving the doctors wiggle room here for missing this, but that does make quite a bit of sense that would be something they'd be thinking about up until you start breaking bones. That doesn't, that's not how that goes.
Right. Yeah. That's what I thought that it could have been, but they didn't even go that far. I thought, well, you guys, is it EDS? And they were like, no, you don't have those symptoms. And like you, I always felt like I did. Still to this day, I feel like I have a lot of those symptoms, but they have said I don't. So I guess I don't. Yeah, I had a doctor actually when I was sick. This was, I'm trying to remember if this was before or after I broke my sternum, but I had a doctor request that I go to the chiropractor, and
oh God,
I did.
Oh, dude, I wouldn't go there even if I was fully healthy.
I know.
Oh God, I don't want to hear the story. I know where this is going.
I know, and my poor father, who has always just been like, "Stay away, don't go."
I was gonna say
he's told me my entire life that. I was like, well, you're desperate. You're totally desperate for something that might help you, and I have somebody I trust recommending that I go to a chiropractor, and so I go and. Yeah, that was a bad experience.
You're lucky you didn't break your neck.
I know. It could have been so much worse than it was, which was really just traumatizing physically and mentally. But I don't think I broke anything that wasn't already broken, or like a rib maybe, which I was breaking constantly. So yeah, I remember I went 3 times, and the first 2 times were really painful. but I was constantly in pain anyway. So I'm just, again, grasping at straws. And the third time I go, he, is kind of behind me and lifts me up. And I just started bawling. I just couldn't even take it. And he sets me down, and we're all just kind of looking at each other like, okay, I'm going to slowly back away to the door. We're going to pretend like this never happened. I had purchased a membership. I literally never heard from them again. We just silently cut ties with each other.
Did he try to act like whoa, it's clearly a subluxation?
No.
Did he try that? Okay.
He didn't even try. I think we both were kind of so shocked in the moment. Yeah. And I was so emotional, and I had to go back to work. I was with my coworker, and she's just kind of looking at me like, are you okay? And then we just drive back to the office. I just get in the car, and I just put my sunglasses on, and I'm just crying underneath my sunglasses. And we just go back to the office, and then I just go back to typing on my computer like, this is fine. Everything's fine. So that was the worst thing. Not the worst thing. It was one of the worst things that I did. And
you still haven't been diagnosed.
I still haven't been diagnosed.
This is months of problems. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. You guys, I could go on and on. I went to like one of those Chinese medicine practitioners where they like step on you and like bend you in all of these certain ways. Like it is an absolute miracle that I walked out of this alive. I mean, I was trying everything and I was in so much pain the whole time. Finally, I couldn't lift my torso really anymore. And I was living at home at the time. I had to move home for all of this, but I was living at home during the pandemic, and I was at one end of the house. Well, then my bathroom became too far away. So then I moved into the guest room, which was closer to the bathroom. I would wake up, kind of roll myself out of bed, hobble to the bathroom with my hands on my knees, do my best. And then that became too difficult that I had to move into my mom's room, into her bed. And then that became too difficult that I had a commode by the bed, couldn't shower, couldn't do anything.
1 million downloads. That's the listenership that Good News for Lefties has gotten since we started bringing you positive news stories for progressives every day of the week. These may be difficult times, and the headlines may seem bleak. But if you believe in justice, progress, and democracy, you are not alone. There are millions like you. And there is reason for hope in the news every single day. That's what we remind you on Good News for Lefties and America. Every day of the week, positive news stories for progressive listeners. Because no matter how disturbing the headlines might be, there's always hope that we can build on for a better tomorrow. 1 million downloads, and more coming. Good News for Lefties and America. Listen on this platform at goodnewsforlefties.com or wherever podcasts are heard.
I mean, my parents were really helpful in pushing the doctors and asking for tests. And my dad called a colleague of his and was like, is this myeloma? Like, we're just so confused. And he's like, I've never seen a case that young ever, but sounds like it really could be. And so we asked them to do the tests. They found that I was anemic, and they tried to push back and just be like, well, you're a young menstruating female. So
that doesn't explain all the broken bones.
Right?
Like
I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I've always been a young menstruating female. Like, I'm just all of a sudden anemic now? Like, I don't get it. And I was like, no. And yeah, so finally they did the tests, and my primary care doctor, who I'd been seeing this whole entire time, was shocked. And she immediately handed me off to the hematology oncologist and was like, please, I'm so sorry. Like, go. They were just afraid that I was going to sue them because, in 2017, they had done sort of the $1 million workup, and they had seen that my protein was high. So there had been an indicator all along.
And this is 2021, you said?
Yeah.
So 4 years.
Yeah. So they immediately got very nervous, I think, that I was going to try to sue because I had done the test and they told me that everything was fine.
Yeah.
Now that they've made the diagnosis, now you're moving into the world of cancer treatment. So that I've heard some cancer patients say that that's almost like entering into a different stage of your life or a different world. Kind of tell us, what did that look like, and take it from there.
Yeah, and you're in a place where you have family support, right? You're getting your treatment, and when you said you moved back home to deal with it, you were already in the same city as your parents. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I was living at home. I was in LA for several years after college and then moved back home. And then the pandemic happened. And so I was like, I'm not going anywhere during this. And then cancer happened. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it went from, at least I had some independence at my end of the house to I now live in my mom's bed next to her, and I'm sleeping next to her with a commode by the side of the bed. So yes, I was in a place where I had so much support. I had friends, family. I felt so supported, but it all happened so fast from that point on. The second I was diagnosed, I couldn't walk at that point. So I was in a wheelchair. Driving was really hard. So it was really hard for me to get to and from the hospital. And they told me that I wasn't even in a place where I could start chemo, that they did a PET scan, and they say with myeloma patients, it lights up like a Christmas tree. And of course it did. And they were like, oh, wow, your left arm is basically about to break. So they were like, we need to go in and we need to put a plate in your humerus now. Like, that's the first thing that needs to happen. You're not physically in a place where you can start chemo or do any of that. So they rushed me in. I immediately had a surgery and spent the night. Then they sent me back home. Unfortunately, I got pneumonia. I'm not sure how, but developed pneumonia, maybe on the operating table, came back, was maybe only home for about 24 hours. Had to go back to the hospital. They had to treat that, which myeloma and pneumonia do not mix very well. And I couldn't breathe properly because my sternum was still broken at this point. They also don't know that it's broken at this point. So they still are under the impression that I am just, I don't know what they're thinking at this point, because I'm telling them that I'm having pain there, but I'm so swept up in everything else that they don't even know. Well, I get pneumonia because I can't breathe, go in, and they're like, oh, you definitely have a broken sternum in 2 places. Now we have to fix that. So my sweet surgeon kneels down next to my bed and is like, do you want me to do a bronchoscopy while I'm in there and just clean your lungs out? And I was just like, yes, please, because I couldn't breathe, really. And I couldn't cough. That was one thing that I just stopped doing. My body stopped yawning. I stopped coughing. I stopped doing any of the like involuntary kind of functions of my upper body. So I wasn't really able to get that stuff out of my lungs. And so she fought for me, and she was like, we're going to put a rod in there or another plate, and we're going to try to figure it out. And she said that a lot of other doctors at the time were like, that's not going to work. What are you going to attach it to? I mean, the bone is falling apart. It's broken. How is that going to work? And she fought for me, which was so wonderful and life-changing. And they went in and they put a rod in, and they knew it would come out at some point. But for the time being, it lessened the pain and really helped. So I had to do all of that, spend about, I feel like it was a week, maybe a little over a week. Maybe it was 2 weeks in the hospital. Then I could finally start chemo after I had sort of healed from all of those things. At that point, I needed to do induction chemotherapy for my stem cell transplant, which was a combination of immunotherapy and chemotherapy. And I did that along with radiation on all of the different parts of my body that were like Swiss cheese that they needed to fix.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I am not an oncologist. I know our last guest, Brandon, had ALL, which sometimes can be cured with chemotherapy alone. And it's only the rare types that you then need to go and do a bone marrow transplant. But for multiple myeloma, the only cure is a bone marrow transplant, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So their chemo was, you immediately went into just wiping out your immune system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What they had said to me was, because I'm so young, they're going to throw everything at it. And some people do tandem transplants. CAR T is something that they're exploring a lot now for multiple myeloma, which is a little bit easier on the body to what I'm aware of than the stem cell transplant is, because you don't have to do that really intense chemotherapy prior to the transplant. They were like, we're just going to throw everything at it. And they certainly did. Myeloma is a little tricky because it's called an incurable cancer. So it immediately just becomes, I would say, a chronic illness, essentially, once they've gone through all of this treatment. I'm just going to have to continue to watch it for the rest of my life and hope that it doesn't come back. In a lot of people, it does. Everybody is different. They classify it very differently. So there's standard risk and high risk. There's not stages or anything like that. Fortunately, I'm standard risk, but you just never know. You never know if it's going to come back. You never know what it's going to look like. People go through 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of treatment for myeloma. They are pretty optimistic about the treatments now and how things have advanced, that the prognosis is much better. So they're not necessarily worried that the myeloma is going to kill me. A lot of times they're like, oh, you'll die of something else. Like, don't worry about it once they get it treated and once they get it under control. But of course, it's still a really scary thing. And you don't know that during that really intense treatment period, what the future is going to look like for you. So
having chemo, a lot of the chemo agents are oncogenic themselves. And so it puts you at risk for other cancers down the road. So it's just, I imagine it's just constant monitoring and maintenance for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm still on maintenance chemotherapy, the same pills that I took during my induction phase, but at a much lower dose. And I still have symptoms from that. I have a lot of brain fog and sometimes some digestive issues from the chemo and fatigue, a lot of fatigue. But for the most part, I'm so much better than I was because I was so sick before that this feels easier.
Now, with your bone marrow transplant, I guess that I know that can be quite a traumatic experience. How did that go for you?
It definitely was traumatic. And I would say the hardest part of the bone marrow biopsy, or excuse me, the bone marrow transplant for me was the isolation. So a lot of my treatment took place during the pandemic and my family couldn't really be there. This was at a time where they could come, but if they left, they couldn't come back. So they could only come for a few hours a day and then that was it. Didn't see them until the next day. I didn't want to be alone. I think I just wanted somebody there with me, which is the most boring thing when you're a caregiver, I imagine. It's like, I'd love for you to just watch me sleep. You know, like I didn't have the energy to do anything at all. And I was really, really sick and it was nauseous moving. I mean, I would wake up, open my eyes, and just the movement of my eyes would make me nauseous and throw up. So I just wanted people there with me, I think. And I didn't really get to have that as much as I would have liked. That isolation and how sad it made me and how depressed I felt during that 2-week time was the hardest part, I think.
The 2-week time, I'm sorry, this is as you're undergoing the bone marrow transplant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. They keep you in the hospital for 2 weeks.
Can you explain how a bone marrow transplant works? Because it's like, there's 200 bones. Like, what are they, like, how it works?
Yeah. So for me, I had what's called an autologous transplant, meaning they took my own stem cells, and stem cell transplant and bone marrow transplant can be interchanged. So usually we'll call them a stem cell transplant. I'm not sure why, but it's the same thing as bone marrow transplant. They took my own cells through apheresis, spun them around, cleaned them, and then put them back into my body.
Prior to this, they absolutely nuked her immune system.
Yeah.
They just scorched all the bone marrow out. So they were starting from scratch.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I always think of it as the layman terms, like it's like Control-Alt-Delete on your immune system. Like you are
Totally
rebooting the entire thing, but to do that properly, like they have to completely wipe out yours so that either your renewed system or a stranger stem cell transplant will actually graft, and the original cancer cells, there's nothing there to replicate.
I gotcha. I didn't realize. So when this happens, it's like your bones are basically becoming hollow. It's not just like there's nothing,
not
no
hollow,
active
but
immune system. But
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like there's no business being done.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
really-
Yeah. And you're so immunocompromised, which is actually, I mean, it's crazy to me, but some people do an outpatient bone marrow transplant.
Holy cow. I didn't know that was an option.
I am so glad I didn't have to do that. I don't know why that's an option. I mean, I feel like you should definitely be in the hospital in a controlled environment if you're going to have your complete and total immune system knocked out, but you can do them outpatient. I did mine inpatient. They kept me for the 14 days and they were very strict about what can come in, what can go out. You're on this special floor. When you go back home, you know, my mom had to wash the carpet. I couldn't have my cat near me. I had to drink bottled water. There were, you know, no deli meat, no sushi, no, you know, anything that could potentially make you sick. So it's really strict, really strict.
How long until the discomfort and like nausea or the stuff that goes with that procedure goes away? They
say that the first 100 days after a transplant is kind of the milestone that you want to reach. I would say that's pretty accurate, or at least it was in my case, because that 100 days was hard. The hardest part was that first 2 weeks. By the time I got back home, I felt better, but I still to this day have not really recovered the same sense of hunger or wanting to eat or anything like that. Like in that moment after I had that chemo, eating became a chore. It was never a chore before. It was something I did because I loved it and I loved food and I still like to eat quite a bit, but that just went away because everything made me nauseous. I had to start from the bottom. It was like, okay, you can eat a few pieces of yogurt or a few spoons of yogurt. Now you can eat half the yogurt. Now you can eat the full yogurt. Now it's moving on to cottage cheese. It was just, it was hard. And then if I ate too fast or too much, I would throw up. So I really slowly had to learn how to eat again, essentially.
I know this is your story, but you know, as a physician and as a parent, I am just imagining what your dad went through to watch his daughter suffer through this and then to not be able to be there for some of those moments. Like that's heartbreaking to me to kind of watch this from the outside looking in at that there.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you have very supportive parents as well too. Like, oh, that's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. My mom was working at the time. My dad was retired and they would take shifts. So my dad would watch me because I couldn't get up to go to the bathroom for a long time, or I would need help to go to the bathroom when I was home. Like my sweet father would have to pull my pants up, you know, like I could not bend down and do that. They had to make sure I didn't fall. And so my dad would kind of watch me during the day. He would hang out, you know, we would just watch TV or whatever. And then he would help me when I needed it. And then when my mom came home from work, she would take over. My dad would go back to his house. My parents are separated. So she would watch over me through the night and then they would do it every single day. And, you know, they were there for me, taking me to all my appointments and driving 10 miles an hour because my body couldn't take it if they went any faster around any curbs or, you know, corners or anything like that. Everything hurt. Every turn in the vehicle hurt. So, and that didn't go away when I had my transplant. That is still something that I deal with to this day, is a lot of pain that I never had before. Of course, it's much better now. And I've had 3 surgeries in total on my sternum, which has helped quite a bit with the pain. But it's been a process. And that was one of the hardest things for me to watch was my parents have to go through this and have to see me in this way. Those first 2 weeks when I was in the hospital having the surgeries, they couldn't be there at all. So we just had to FaceTime. And that was so challenging for them, I imagine, because your child has just been diagnosed with cancer. And we didn't know how long I was going to be in the hospital. My mom put me in a wheelchair. And then the people at the hospital took me and she didn't see me for 2 weeks. We had no idea that that's how it would go down. You know, same with the bone marrow transplant. My mom is at home making sure that everything in the house is as clean as possible because you don't want your child to get sick. You know, she's cleaning every nook and cranny of the room that I'm going to be in. And my brother is afraid to come over and see me and get me sick. And, you know, people are keeping their distance. I couldn't physically hug them either because my bones were so fragile that I didn't receive a hug throughout my entire treatment or transplant. Or, I mean, it took a long time for me to even be able to hug them. So they are just suffering at a distance, watching me go through this. Yeah, I mean, that is so heartbreaking when you're the one going through it because you can't make it better. And you don't want to feel like you're the reason that they are suffering or that they're having a hard time. You know, you don't want your parents to suffer when you're the child, but I'd also rather it be me than them. I don't want them to get sick. And not like that's how it even works. But I, was just like, oh, if it has to be someone, let it be me. I'd rather it be me than be my mom or my dad. But, they say that same thing. They're like, well, I would rather it be me than you. And so it's tough for everybody.
God, you're killing me, Erika.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Jesus.
Man.
We've dealt some rough ones on this. I don't think I've gotten misty-eyed. At least not recently.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
How long has it been now since the transplant?
I had it in July of 2021. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So almost 5 years of still taking the low dose oral chemo.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
is there any, is there hope to fully taper off of that? Or is that something you stay on? How does that work?
Well, it began with 2 years. And then when I was doing well after 2 years, they're like, well, let's do 5 years. So there's a lot of studies that go back and forth about how effective it is to stay on it versus not stay on it. And like I said, myeloma is kind of a different beast and it can come back. I know people where they did their transplant, they stopped chemo, it came back right away. There's also this mental piece of it too, where I almost don't want to go off the chemo because what does that mean? Does that mean that if I stop taking this, even though it causes symptoms that I don't love, does that mean that the cancer is going to come back right away? How many years does that mean I have before it comes back? And even though I feel confident about how far research has come, it's still going to be hard if I have to do whatever it is, CAR T, a transplant, or chemo, immunotherapy. I don't know what that would look like. So, and some people, it never comes back. Some people, they do all of this, they stop the maintenance chemo, and then they never hear from the myeloma again. So they just have no clue.
I would love to, follow up with you in a year or two and hear, what they're doing. And particularly what CAR T is a new form of kind of immunotherapy that's fascinating. And it is a new way of kind of treating and almost pre-treating cancer stuff that can really knock down how much chemo and bad stuff that has to be done. So I'm really curious if they push you more into, I don't want to say push, advise you more into that line of treatment, because that is cutting edge and it's much more, I don't want to say humane, but it is a much gentler form of treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm interested in that one. Last I checked, it was more for clinical trials or for people who have gone through several different lines of treatment. So what I've had is one line of treatment. And so there's a chance, I suppose, that they would make me, they would have me try something else before they would allow me to do CAR T. But they say in myeloma a lot, if you can just sort of get by until the next advancement, then you're in a good spot. Because I say this now, but if my myeloma comes back, they could be giving CAR T to everybody, which would be awesome. So.
No, I was just going to say that everything you just said about weighing the chemotherapy is the exact conversation. If you just sub in the word allergy shots for chemo that I've had so many times, I'm like, this is the severe version of my allergy shot conversation that I have.
Exactly.
With everything you've been through and then everything you're living with now, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
My job. Not to tie it into Dear Jack, but
man, she's fishing for that raise there, Susan.
Performance review A+.
No, it's true. Because it's what I'm passionate about doing. It also gives me a sense of purpose that is really kind of easy to lose when you're diagnosed with cancer. I see a lot of people on social media and otherwise who are like, wow, I got cancer and now I live life to the fullest and everything's great. And, there are still hard days, but like my attitude is super positive. That's not really how it is for everybody. Sometimes it's really hard to get out of bed. And before I started working at Dear Jack, I didn't really have any direction. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know what my body would allow me to do anymore, what my mind would allow me to do anymore, what I would be like as an employee anymore, or any of that. I mean, everything about you changes. Like, I joke that the only thing that stayed the same was my name. Like, I had compression fractures all throughout my spine. So I'm 3 inches shorter than I was when I was diagnosed. Wow. I probably weigh 30 pounds less than I did, and I can't seem to gain that weight back. My hair is a different color. It's a different texture. Everything about me is different than not only it was before, but how I imagined it would be. I didn't know what I could even do. And so challenging myself at my job every single day and, getting to work with people like Susan who are equally passionate about helping young adults with cancer, that's really what gets me out of bed. That and my cat also, who I love very much.
I want to expand or ask you kind of a deeper question there. With your experiences, working with cancer patients, I imagine could be either very fulfilling, very frightening, or even, I don't want to say a downer, but like just kind of reminding you of your own situation. How do you navigate that, and how do you feel about working day to day with people kind of in the same boat as you?
That was an interview question.
Was it? I don't even remember.
Yeah, like how are you going to manage this? Because it's
okay. So you've been asked this before.
Yeah, it's now your responsibility to tell these stories that are going to pull you right back into it every single day.
Yeah,
and how are you going to?
That's exactly what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember that from the interview?
Nope, I have no recollection of that.
You're in a fugue state.
Okay, good. Good. I don't know what I said, but therapy, I go to therapy and my therapist is so wonderful. She was my social worker when I was going through treatment. So she's been there with me through the whole thing, and seeing her. And that was something we discussed prior to me getting this job, was that's a very real thing that's going to happen. You're going to be faced with hearing other people's stories. Maybe that's meeting somebody who also has myeloma, right? That could be triggering, or there's all these triggers that could potentially pop up. So therapy has certainly helped with that. But I mean, it really hasn't been something that's triggered me like I thought it would. I think I was more nervous going in than I am now. And I haven't been faced with anything that I feel like I can't handle. But it's a very real question and concern that, of course, I'm going to be talking to people at our events and things like that who are survivors, and becoming more comfortable telling my story, and going on retreats with other cancer patients who are at a different phase of their treatment than I am. And I do think the further out you get, I don't want to say the easier it becomes, but the more distance and time you can get between the diagnosis and whatever it is you're doing, the better, for me, at least. So the more time that goes by, the more acclimated I get, the better it'll get, I think.
There's a spectrum I've seen in the last 10 years of doing this of there's so many young adults that when they're done with treatment, they just want to, and understandably, just want to walk away from it all. They don't want to talk about cancer again. They never want to go back there. They have got to just kind of shut the door on it. Everybody in between, currently we have 5 staff people and 2 of them are young adult cancer survivors. And that is the interview question of how are you going to manage this, including our director of programs, who's a social worker and is in the weeds with our participants every day. So to me, it's really an amazing development to see that. I feel like stories are getting out there more and awareness is getting stronger, so that some of these young adults are in their survivorship moving to this empowered place of, I can use my skill set to move the needle on this situation.
One theme that we've talked about actually several times on this show is the hierarchy of maturity of coping mechanisms. And at the very top is altruism. And I think you have adopted that as a lifestyle, and obviously it's serving you well. Second is humor, which is always a good one there. But no,
Yeah.
altruism is.
Third is needle drugs.
Yeah.
So I just have to say your story has just been inspiring, not just like with everything you've muscled through and survived, but now what you're doing with that afterwards is just amazing.
Thank you. I mean, I couldn't see it any other way. I think that I didn't really have a purpose before cancer. You know, I was just going to my 9-to-5 job. I didn't have something that I was really passionate about in the way that I'm passionate about advocating for young adults with cancer. So cancer certainly gave me that. It gave me a purpose and a passion, and has connected me with people who feel the same way. And I knew I wanted to tell my story from the beginning. I had started an Instagram page simply to just tell people what was happening, because I could not physically update people with what was happening in my cancer journey and my treatment and how I was doing and everything. But I remember from the very beginning, from that first day, essentially after I was diagnosed, I was like, I need to advocate for people with cancer, but also with myeloma, because it is so rare. And I was misdiagnosed for so long. And the reason I am where I'm at in my recovery is because I was diagnosed with so long, of course, or misdiagnosed for so long. Of course, I would still have cancer, right? But if it didn't take them so long, if I didn't go to the chiropractor, if I didn't do all of those things that made me worse, I wouldn't have the physical pain that I still deal with today. That kind of just lit a fire under me that, like, we have to diagnose young adults before it's either too late or before the damage has been done.
Can I also just say, I think it's incredible, like, that you are, I mean, just so recently went through the depths of this, because when we, like, just from talking to you today, because when we were talking at the beginning and we had a delay, it was just me, Eric, and Erika were talking for a while. And I did not realize that you were a cancer survivor. I thought you were an employee of Dear Jack, who was going to talk to us about the organization. And then you I don't do any research. All right. So then you said something about your treatment. And then I texted Eric and I was like, did she say she had cancer? And he's like, yeah, dude, she's our guest. I'm like, okay.
In Ryan's defense,
anyway,
we do this on purpose. We just have one host that knows kind of the stories and stuff. And then the other people are generally blind to the idea.
Good to know, because I thought it was just me. We recently had a guest. So in our text thread, someone said, we've got this FBI behavioral analyst coming on. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It's like the Mindhunter unit, right? And I'm so excited. And then our next episode, I'm thinking I think it's this guy. And then I come on, and this guy, who's our guest, he looks like a ticket scalper or something. Like I'm just like he's like surrounded by like anime dolls and shit. And I'm like, what? This is who is running the behavioral analysis unit. And then we start talking. It's like, that is not this guy's job at all. So it's good to know that no one else knows what's going on either. Okay. But anyway, all that's to say that it's amazing what you've been through and where you are now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hopefully I put the pieces together enough for you to follow along.
Yeah. You did. You had a grueling journey, and I can't imagine the psychological and physical toll that you suffered from being told for years that you were just too anxious, or your bones were breaking because of hormonal things and like all these things, and the fact that you went through all this almost on your own. It sounds like only your parents truly believed you. And then you came out, and you're the fact that on the other side of this, that you're advocating for people who were in your position before it's admirable. It's inspiring, and we like to thank you for coming on the show and sharing that with everyone.
Thank you.
As the marketing director for Dear Jack, please tell us how we can help with Dear Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people want to get involved with the Dear Jack Foundation, they can go to dearjackfoundation.org. And we're always looking for people to share their skills, their knowledge, their resources with us. We're a small team. They can go ahead and fill out our Get Involved form on the website. And they can follow along on social media at Dear Jack Foundation. And We're always looking for donations as well. If that's something that you have the capacity to do or give, we are always grateful for that. Every little bit counts. And we just look forward to connecting with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ryan, do you have anything to plug before we sign off?
Nah, not yet. I'll have stuff next episode. It's just stuff that's coming up months from now, so there's no reason to. Oh, well, actually, my novel, The Party. You can Google it. You can find it, and you can read it. It's a satire about fascism. It's the easiest way to put it. I just turned in my second book today, but it doesn't come out till November.
Very good. Well, thank you, Susan and Erika. We really appreciate everything you do, and we will see you next time.
Music for Baggage provided by Quincy Ledbetter. You can find his stuff at qledbetter.com. Graphics provided by Megan Weaver. You can find her at meganweaverart.com. Special thanks to our premium members for their support. You can become a premium member by clicking subscribe in your Apple Podcast app or by visiting thebaggagepodcast.com/support to sign up or to gift a membership to someone. A percentage of all proceeds go to charity. If you have any questions, comments, or a good story to share, please email us at thebaggagepodcast@gmail.com.
Hey listeners, quick question. Do you know what extraterrestrial radio signals and a mushroom from Texas have in common? Or what a number station is and why it's so haunting and creepy? If you're intrigued by those questions, Midnight Facts for Insomniacs has the answers.
Join us, Duncan and Shane, hosts, comedians, and best friends, on hilarious deep dives into obscure facts from science, history, and pop culture.
So whether you're nocturnal or just a fan of laughing and learning, we'll keep you entertained. Find Midnight Facts for Insomniacs wherever you're listening to this show.